Chapter 16, Fetish, concluded, in which the discourse on apparitions is continued, with some observations on secret societies, both tribal and murder, and the kindred subject of leopards. Apparitions are by no means always of human soul origin. All the Shui and Iwi gods, for example, have the habit of appearing pretty regularly to their priests and occasionally to the laity, like Sasabonsum, but it is only to the priests that these appearances are harmless or beneficial. The effect of Sanabonsum appearance to the layman I have cited above, and I could give many other examples of the bad effects of those other gods, but will now only mention Tando, the Hatter, the chief god of the northern Shui, the Ashantis, etc. He is terribly malicious, human in shape, and though not quite white, is decidedly lighter in complexion than the chief gods of the southern Shui, Bobo Wisi. His hair is lank, and he carries a native sword and wears a long robe. His well-selected messengers are those awful driver ants, Inkran, which is not orthodox to molest in Tando's territories. He uses as his weapons lightning, tempest, and disease, but the last is the most favorite one. There is absolutely no trick too mean or venomous for Tando. For example, he has a way of appearing near a village he has a grudge against in the form of a male child, and wanders about crying bitterly until some kind-hearted, unsuspecting villager comes and takes him in and feeds him. Then he develops a contagious disease that clears that village out. This form of appearance and subsequent conduct is, unhappily, not rigidly confined to Tando, but is used by many spirits as a method of collecting arrears in taxes in the way of sacrifices. I have found traces of it among Bantu gods or spirits, and it gives rise to a general hesitation in West Africa to take care of waifs and strays of unexplained origin. Other things beside gods and human spirits have the habit of becoming incarnate. Once I had to sit waiting a long time at an apparently perfectly clear bush path, because in front of us a spear's ghost used to fly across the path about that time in the afternoon, and if anyone was struck by it, they died. A certain spring I know of is haunted by the ghost of a pitcher. Many ladies have gone alone to fill their pitchers in the evening time at this forest spring, have noticed a very fine pitcher standing there, ready filled, and thinking exchange is no robbery, or at any rate, if they would risk it, if it were, have left their own pitcher and taken the better looking one. But always as soon as they have come within sight of the village huts, the new pitcher has crumbled into dust, and the water in it has been spilt on the ground. And the worst of it is, when they have returned to fetch their own discarded pitcher, they find it also shattered into pieces. There is also another class of apparition, of which I have met with two instances, one among pure Negroes, Oinkion, the other among the pure Bantu, Kangwe. I will give the Bantu version of the affair, because at the Oinkion incident had happened a good time before the details were told me, and in the Bantu case, they had happened the previous evening. But there was a very little difference in the main facts of the case, and it was an important thing because in both cases, the underlying idea was sacrificial. The woman who told me was an exceedingly intelligent, shrewd, reliable person. She had been to the factory with some trade and had got a good price for it, and so was in good temper on her return home in the evening. She got out of her canoe and, leaving her slave boy to bring up the things, walked to her house, which was the ordinary house of a prosperous Iguala native, having two distinct rooms in it and a separate cookhouse close by in a clean, sandy yard. She trod on some nastiness in the yard, and going into the cookhouse found the slave girls round a very small and inefficient fire, trying to cook the evening meal. She blew them up for not having a proper fire. They said the wood was wet and would not burn. She said they lied, and she would see to them later, and she went into the chamber she used for a sleeping apartment, and trod on something more on the floor in the dark, for those good-for-nothing hussies of slaves had not lit her palm oil lamp, and mentally forming the opinion that they'd been out flirting during her absence, and resolving to teach them well the iniquity of such conduct, she sat down on her bed into a lot of messy stuff of a clammy, damp nature. Now this fairly roused her, for she is a notable housewife who keeps her house and slaves in exceedingly good order. So, dismissing from her mind the commercial considerations she had intended to gloat over when she came into her room, she called Ingramina and the others in a tone that brought those young ladies on the spot. She asked them how they dared to forget to light her lamp, and they said they had not, but the lamp in her room must have gone out like the other lamps had, after burning dim and spluttering. They further said they had not been out, but had been sitting round the fire trying to make it burn properly. She duly whacked and pulled the ears of all within reach. I say within reach, for she is not very active, weighing, I am sure, upwards of 15 stone. Then she went back into her room and got out her beautiful English paraffin lamp, which she keeps in a box, and taking it into the cookhouse, picked up a bit of wood from the hissing, sputtering fire and lit it. When she picked up the wood, she noticed that it was covered with the same sticky abomination she had met before that evening, and it smelt of the same faint smell she had noticed as soon as she had reached her house, and by now the whole air seemed oppressive with it. As soon as the lamp was alight, she saw what the stuff was, namely, blood. Blood was everywhere. The rest of the sticks in the fire had it on them. It sizzled at the burning ends and ran off the others in rills. There were pools of it about her clean, sandy yard. Her own room was reeking, the bed, the stools, the floor. It trickled down the doorpost, coagulated on the lintel. She herself was smeared in it from the things she had come in contact with in the dark, and the slaves seemed to have been sitting in pools of it. The things she picked up off the table and shelves left rims of it behind them, and there was more in the skittles, and in the oil, and in the open palm oil lamps had a film of it floating on the oil. Investigation showed that the whole of the rest of her house was in a similar mess. The good lady gave a complete catalogue of the household furniture and its conditions, which I need not give here. The slave girls, when the light came, were terrified at what they saw, and she called in the aristocracy of the village and asked them their opinion on the blood palaver. They said they could make nothing of it at first, but subsequently formed the opinion that it meant that something was going to happen, and suggested with the kind, helpful cheerfulness of relatives and friends that they should not wonder if they were prophecy of her own death. This view irritated the already tired lady, and she sent them about their business, and started the slaves on house cleaning. The blood cleaned up all right when you were about it, but kept on turning up in other places, and in one you just cleaned as soon as you left off, and went elsewhere, and then the morning came and found things in much the same state, until before sun-time, say about 10 o'clock, when it faded away. I cautiously tried to get my stately, touchy dowager duchess to explain how it was that there was such a lot of blood, and how it was got into the house. She said it had to go somewhere, and refused to give rational explanation, as Chambers' Journal does after telling a good ghost story. I found afterwards that it was quite decidedly it was a case of blood comes before, and at Oikeon, Miss Seltzer told me, in regards to the similar case there, that this was the opinion held regarding the phenomenon. It is always held uncanny in Africa if a person dies without shedding blood. You see, the blood is the life, and if you see it come out, you know the going of the thing, as it were. If you do not, it is mysterious. At Oikeon, a few days after the blood appeared, a nephew of the person whose house it came into was killed while felling a tree in the forest. A bough struck him and broke his neck without shedding a drop of blood, and this bore out the theory, for the blood, having to go somewhere, came before. In the Bantu case, I did not hear of such a supporting incident happening.